but it's always nice to find people who are somewhat who've been successful, or a little bit more successful, to kind of just say, like, take a look at it, and say, like, hey, I know you're publishing it, doing it all yourself, but maybe you'd want to tweak this. It's just nice to get that kind of advice from somebody you kind of respect in the field. And I feel like I've done that throughout my whole career for the most part. I've always asked for opinions, regardless, even if you weren't in the industry, just to say, like, does this make sense? I mean, a sentence could totally not make sense at all, but you're looking at this thing, it's your project, you're really in it, and if you're able to get that bird's eye view somehow and step back and look, then you could probably, get a better perspective on how, your project's going to come out.
Yeah, the way to look at this is a lot of movie studios will preview a film to a limited audience to see what their reaction is before they release it, knowing full well they can go back and film little pieces here and there and do some tweaks and make this better or make that better. Like
it's a focus group for film.
Yeah, the end of In Search of, was it Search of, no, what's the one? The second one.
Wrath of Khan.
Wrath of Khan. At the end of Wrath of Khan, Spock's dead. And that originally was the end of the film. He dies. He just dies. Yeah. There's nothing after that. And they previewed it in the theater to a very limited audience. And people were walking out of the film depressed as hell. Here's their icon, their buddy from when they were growing up, who's meant so much to them, and he's dead.
Yeah, right.
And then they previewed it, and they said, no, we can't have people coming out of this movie where they're not going to recommend to their friends to come see it again, or go with these people who want to see it, multiple times. They were walking out all depressed.
Yeah.
So they went back and they filmed a little scene where the tube, goes back to the Genesis planet and, lands there, and you see the tube and you hear the animals that never existed before, and you see Spock's tube, which Spock's dead,
Right.
He's in there, but is he dead or not? The big question mark. It made all the difference in the film.
It does, but you still walk out depressed.
So, you're still upset that Spock's dead.
That little hope,
gave him
right,
that little kernel of, is he dead?
Right.
That completely changed everything.
Yeah.
It made it a magnificently better film because of it.
Right.
Because you think, well, maybe he will overcome.
Yeah, and then back to the next one.
Yeah. Well, it enabled them to make the next sequel. They had something to make a sequel.
That's right. That's the whole thing. If you can make a sequel or expand the universe of whatever you're doing in any way. I mean, just because you write something or create something that you think is just self-contained and not going to go anywhere, there's always something that you could go back to and some piece of dialogue that you could expand. You could be like, oh, this might be better to expand here.
And if you can't find it, ask the people that have looked at your work to find it, because they will. They'll tell you.
Yeah.
Say, well, wait, what about this scene? Why can't you do this?
No, you're right. That's the whole thing. I mean, I wrote something where it was just two people talking. It was a bullying film. Guy was incarcerated and he was trying to figure out, like why he was there. Basically, somebody was kind of shadowing him and kind of killing his former classmates. So at a certain point, we just filmed like the two people talking, and then as we're like going through it, and we're like, maybe we should expand it and show all of the murders. So that was just a whole other thing that we kind of explored. Like, oh well, we have time, we could do this and go and hire some more people and just do a whole entire new scenes, and it actually filled out really well. I mean, the movie did great, and it gave it a whole other depth that you just didn't think of at the time.
I mean, you think of the film Silence of the Lambs.
Mm-hmm.
Who would have thought there'd be a sequel to that? Okay, where do you pick up from that?
Right.
It's kind of interesting when you think about it, that something that you make, you create, it does end up with a life of its own, and it can go in different directions that you never thought it would go in. Because there is more to explore. You still have the theme. Okay.
Right. Well, that's the thing. You have the whole theme, and it just gives yeah, it just gives you a whole bunch of different avenues to go and create, you know?
Exactly.
But I think that's the thing with all kind of storytelling, right? If you're able to tell a really good underlying theme that doesn't really choke your audience, you're in good shape.
Yeah,
you know?
The thing about storytelling was, I forget again what film it's from, but you know, we're all used to, you know, happily ever after. But what the hell does that mean? Happily ever after could be anything. And stories lead into other stories. They create the next batch of stories. You know, the Star Wars and George Lucas and the whole shebang. It's 3 generations. He did a 3-generational sequence of stories, and they all relate to each other. They all mean something to each other. They all, one feeds into the next, and they did this weird, you know, film thing. It's not told sequentially. You told the middle set of stories, and then you went back and told the ancestor set of stories, the generation before, and then you tell the after generation of stories, and you know, you have 3 generations, which is, it's kind of a cool device.
Yeah, no, it's great.
You know, so some of the individual stories are told better than the others, regardless of budget. Some of them just have more of a speed to them. They flow better, you know, and then some of them just kind of, they're plod along.
Well, you know, that's the whole thing. Not every story's a winner, right? Like, so you try and
I take it as sometimes money is not your friend.
Yeah.
More money you throw at something doesn't make it better. It
Right,
just
yeah.
means that you've got more money against it.
Well, that's the thing. You can put all the money in the world into stuff, if the story's just whatever. You know, you're still not going to have a great, you know, film or comic or whatever. You know, it's just not going to be great. And then it's just, you know, you start. I think in the case of Star Wars, I'm always kind of like, you know, it's great to go watch Obi-Wan Kenobi, but like, you know, did I like the whole thing? I mean, it could have sped up a little bit. You know, Book of Boba Fett. You know, I felt like Mandalorian like kicked ass when he kind of came in, you know, and I was like, okay, that's a better show now, you know. So not, you know, the idea of Boba Fett was awesome, but like in reality, you know, maybe they should have worked on it a little bit more.
Well, you know, the Book of Boba Fett, to me, I have this weird thing about it where he really is an anti-hero in such a large way.
Right.
So you can't really root for him as a hero. Whereas the Mandalorian you can root for as a hero, and I think that's where there's a little bit of disconnect with some people, one and the other. And Boba Fett, I thought, was a very interesting story about someone that was not likable. Okay, not every story has to have a hero or have someone that's likable, but there is a theme to it. I mean, here's this guy, he overcame his situation, okay, and became something. It took a while. He was pretty ruthless in how he did it. Okay, but yeah, that definitely is a story, and there's definitely a theme there. And you know, maybe, you know, it's not a happy moral like, hey, you know, kill all your enemies, but it is a story. There's no good moral to that story.
Right.
As versus Mandalorian.
Right, you want to root for him.
You want to root for him. He's taking care of this character, this creature that can't take care of itself. It's a very heroic kind of piece to the story.
When it comes to Boba Fett, though, I think like everybody's rooting for him, or initially, right? Because he's the guy, you know, like he was that bounty hunter that everybody loved. I think like it's the high expectations of characters that you love that go into next series that if you don't hit that, you start to go down.
What's in your imagination?
Right, exactly.
Maybe it doesn't live up to that.
And that's what it comes down to, I think. You know, because you are putting this guy or character into an amazing, you know, pedestal or whatever, you know, and then you walk into the
well,
story and you're like, okay, you know, yeah, the story's fine, but it's not what I was expecting.
But here's the thing about that is that you yourself may view it a certain way, and those that have very little vested in those characters may view it completely different. Like my daughter has a completely different view of Boba Fett than I do, because she doesn't remember Boba Fett. You know, when I was a kid, she wasn't around.
She didn't see the Christmas special?
She didn't have 40 years of it drummed into my imagination the same way, you know, she came to it just cold.
Yeah.
So it's very different expectation, very different.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, like, you know, I was showing my son the Star Wars stuff, and he likes the first three you like?
No, the middle three.
You do still like little? Okay, all right. There was a point that you were kind of like,
See,
you like the first.
that's really interesting, because the ones that are about Anakin, okay,
He likes
it's,
Anakin.
it's a very weird thing, because the moral of the set of the three stories is the corruption of a youth. He goes bad, okay, and that's a different message than the first three movies, which was already, that is,
It was a redemption arc.
Right.
it's a redemption arc, but it's also a rebellion.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a very rebellious story, saying that you can beat the bad guys, you can beat the Empire, as versus the Anakin arc is about, I could have been great, I lost something, I want it back, and oh my God, what the hell did I do in trying to get it back? So you have this which is why I call it a corruption story, because it doesn't leave him in a good spot. Okay, his goals are his own downfall, wanting to bring back his mom.
Right. Yeah. It's a whole different. Yeah. It's a whole different perspective.
And save Padme at the same time.
Yeah. It's a whole different perspective. I mean, I think when he was watching the Clone Wars, you know, that's where, you know, Anakin, that whole war going on, and he loved Anakin, that whole piece.
Yeah, but that's not those three movies.
Right, it's
Those
not,
three
yeah.
movies, you know, he ends up being Darth Vader at the end.
Yeah.
You know, he loses a part of his humanity. He's no longer the same person. He has changed.
Yeah.
You know, and he's, you know, again, his son is able to redeem him at the last moment, which is kind of cool. You know, that the youth can redeem their father. That's pretty cool, and that's a very personal story to Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. George Lucas had a real big problem with his father. He felt that his father, you know, was a dishonest and corrupt man, and did not get along with his father. And that story, that he can redeem his father, that's him reaching out, hoping that he can do that, hoping that he could do that for his own future. I'm talking about George Lucas, that he could do that with his own family.
Yeah.
So it's a very personal story. And, you know, sure, that the surface level is, the guys in the white robes beat the bad guy in black.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, totally. You guys have any questions about publishing, movies, anything like that?
Hit it.
So when you get to the point where you have your thing and you want to say, get money, let's say you want to kickstart it, how do you market to get people to even see your Kickstarter?
Oh, can I take a
Yeah, go ahead.
little break?
Yeah, go ahead.
Holy shit, I'm not sure I know how. Okay, but what I will tell you is you need to understand the hook of your own story. You need to know what drives people to want to be part of your story. We're talking about Star Wars. How do you get people to want to join your rebellion? Okay? If you can get to that part of what you're telling, the story you're telling, now you've got a way to show that to as many people as you can. And if that means walking around Times Square with a placard on saying, join the rebellion, okay? You will immediately start to engage others. Now, if you do that through social media, there's ways to do that through social media. If you've never done it before, you might want to watch how other people are doing it, because if they can get your attention and engage you, it might be a good way to do it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. If you're able to find other Kickstarters or Patreons or whatever that makes sense that to your genre that you're trying to put out there that are successful, see what it is that kind of made people tick. The other thing is really like you have to constantly drive people to that space, right? So how do you do that part of it is kind of a challenge, right? So obviously you start with friends and family and social media and you kind of constantly push. Obviously Twitter's in some weird thing going on right now, but for the most part, you have Facebook, Instagram. If you have some kind of imagery, you kind of get yourself out there. That's a big part of it. Marketing overall, is one of the biggest challenges you're gonna have, right? I mean, you just are.
You just said something, so let's talk about a rebellion for a minute. So a certain someone bought Twitter, and a lot of people at Twitter don't want to work there anymore. And some of them are getting fired, and some of them are leaving. So there's a Twitter rebellion. Like, oh my God, I don't want to be there anymore. If you can somehow, let's say, take that as an example, tap into the mindset, okay, the cultural mindset, like, oh, we're all leaving Twitter. You can create a campaign on Instagram. Don't stay with Twitter. Join me on Instagram. Join my rebellion. You immediately have to have all these people. Oh, what is this about? You have them for that split second. Then the next part. Okay, these are my characters. This is my world, my fantasy. The dancing unicorns that fly spaceships, or whatever it is. Okay, but now you have a way to take this raw energy that's in the culture and push it into what you're doing. Some people will engage with that, some people won't.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's just, what is your real theme? What are you trying to accomplish? And why do I want to donate to your project, right? Like, if you can say the why you should do it and what the benefits are of it, that's like a huge piece, Yeah, you could kind of say like, okay, there's this crazy stuff going on in the world, and you can kind of like try and relate it to your subject and put it out there. But again, it's constantly like trying to make sure you're out there promoting it. So, you could do all the social media, but you really need to like go to places and constantly just say like, hey, I mean, I've seen guys go to publishers in general and have a little sell sheet of their work, and they would just say like, look, just please take a look. And some hit, some don't. If you could find friends that have, or people that have podcasts, get on there. If you could find just anybody that's kind of in a way willing to listen to the idea that you have, that has an outlet, and you know where to drive them, you just do it.
Look at
There's a
Dream on Facebook.
yeah.
We all see the Dream ads.
Yep.
For the cheesy romance novels, all those cheesy werewolf romances.
Yeah.
But it's a way to drive people to that site because they give a blurb.
Right.
The thing that you have to focus on is you need to know what your story is about. You need to be able to communicate that to others in a clean, fine-tuned way, which means talk about it out loud and say it enough times to whoever will listen until you catch the nerve, okay, of what they're hearing and what they engage with. I have tried multiple times to sell multiple books that I publish, sometimes stories by me, sometimes stories by others, and I have to find that the core of the story to communicate that. And if you say it's a coming of age story, cool. People in college might get that. Okay? Probably not people in their 60s will get that because their age was a long time ago. But if you can get the core of the story, communicate that, you need to believe in it. If you don't believe in it, no one else is going to believe in it. Okay? If you believe in it, and it means something to you, when you talk about it, it'll come across. Just like the way I'm talking to you right now. It will come across because you believe it. If I have total doubt in what I'm saying or what I'm trying to communicate, you're going to hear that in my voice, in my tone, my mannerisms, and how I move, what I say, and done. People are bored. On to the next thing.
Think of it as also, you have technically 6 seconds. Okay, that's kind of like the statistic these days. People's attention, especially when they're reading, they got 6 seconds for a catch. Think of it as an elevator pitch. We do it for film. You have to get that 1 or 2 lines in, right? So what is your story? If you could fit that in like 2 lines, 3 lines, and you could say that to people, that's capturing their attention. That's a big part of it. Granted, like as you do Kickstarters and things like that, you may want to do like little videos. You might want to go on TikTok and say, I got this thing, go to here, there's a lot of that goes on, especially if you have some sort of a following. There's another piece where you have to have that elevator pitch, then you have to have another paragraph for maybe other people who want a little more information, and then on your Kickstarter, you might want to have the whole story with the videos and whatever, and again, you have to have like that central focus. Where are you driving people? Are they going to go do you want them to be a Kickstarter? Then if you're on Facebook, that's where that link's got to take them, right? Instagram, you want that photo or whatever it is, it's got to, that link's got to go there, and you've got to constantly do it because algorithms in general are just not there.
The thing I will tell you is that once you have your pitch, try it on someone you don't know.
Yep.
Try it, let's say the guy at the gas station. Try it on somebody at 7-Eleven. Try it on you're riding the train. Tell it to a number of different people you don't know. You're going to get a response back, and what you do with the response tells you if your pitch is working, or if it's good, or if it's a universal kind of thing that people like, or is it just falling on deaf ears? And the whole point about believing in it yourself, that's key, because when you get the response where A, they don't care, or B, they want to move on, they're not engaging with that, it can hurt you mentally. It's like almost this mental rejection, like, oh, they don't like my story, or, oh, what's wrong with me, or people are walking by and they're not talking to me, or whatever. Do not let it hurt you, because that's destructive.
Yeah, I mean, think of it this way, you gotta have a thick skin, okay? You just have to have a thick skin because, I guess it took me years to get my first movie, right? And I went through the whole agent route, went constantly sending letters and all that stuff, getting constant rejections, right, for agents. Constantly happening, thank you for your submission, right? Or thank you for whatever. And if you're okay, look, it takes time, but once you get that to that point of like, we want to do the production of your comic or whatever, you have to be ready. You have to be Johnny on the spot. Okay, so it's all about prep beforehand, and don't worry about the rejections. It's just gonna happen. That's just the way it works. And then like when you get to that point where it's like, we're ready, we're go, we're giving you a green light, you got to be ready. And that's all the being prepared beforehand. So if there's a ton of things you have to just figure out, which is what your story is, write the comic or whatever it is you're going to be doing, and then just constantly just tweaking it and making sure that you have like your pitch ready at a moment's notice, because you can meet anybody anywhere, especially in New York. It's just
I met Lee today.
Right, we just met.
We just met. You would think that we knew each other for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's the thing. And you meet anybody anywhere, and if they're like, oh, I like comic books. Oh, I got this one. Here's my two-second speech. And then you're done. Hopefully it takes you somewhere. Oh, I know somebody who produces comic books. you should talk to that person, you know, and then you get a number, you know, and that's kind of how it works. Same thing with the Kickstarter, you know, you just talk, I have a Kickstarter, blah, 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 you know, oh, okay, you know, let me check it out.
So,
I guess we're at
I think it's
time.
time. It's
Yeah.
time.
Yep, yeah, after time. All right.
Thank you,
Thank you for
gentlemen.
coming.
Thank you for coming, yeah.
Thank you for
Lee,
coming.
thank you for this.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
We need to stay in touch.
Yeah.
I think this is cool.
Yeah, very cool. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, so, you know, been around a bit.
Yes.
And if you need resources, you want to talk,
Okay.
I'm here.
Yeah, definitely, you know.
Like I told you, Marlboro, DC, Marseille, Paris, Suez, it just goes on and on. And I work in advertising, so.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Which,
The agency I work for is called RAP. They're part of Omnicom.
Okay.
Which is like a global
Yeah,
ad
yeah.
agency.
That's awesome. Yeah, my brother worked at, yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
Thanks.
good luck.
You can shut that off if you were still recording. Or are you recording? Shut it off. Don't take up my space.
Why?
Because I want my phone to.
See, I told you.